Peter Parker's had it rough the past few months, being framed for murder with a $5 million bounty on his head. But with the Gathering of Five and new mysteries to unravel fast approaching, things have gotten even crazier. Between the Black Tarantula, Norman Osborn, the Stacy family, new identities, Green Goblins, the Daily Grind crew, and the Trapster, will we rise above it all or crack under the weight? Welcome to the Forgotten Era, where we'll answer all those questions and more. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Forgotten Era podcast. It's me, your host, Ethan. Today, I am once again running solo as I cover Sensational Spider-Man by Todd DeZago. And this time, we're in the first chapter of Identity Crisis, featuring the Hornet identity. So I'm very excited to get into this specific string of books because they are really great. As some of you can probably tell, the intro for the podcast is now different. I decided that I've been wanting to change it up for a little bit now, especially now that we're on episode 20 of the show. And I thought that after Spider Hunt would be kind of the perfect place to do it, because we're in that final string of books, you know, leading from Identity Crisis to those couple months of filler stories and into Gathering of Five and the final chapter. So we're just about done on our journey here for the main stuff. I do hope that we can get some offshoot episodes, because I still would really like to cover, Hobgoblin Lives. We need to go through Spider-Man Unlimited at some point. And then once we finish up the final chapter, I'm hoping to do chapter 1, as controversial as that'll be. And of course, the reboot of Amazing Spider-Man and Peter Parker. The goal of the show, when we first were thinking about it, at least in my mind, was that we would cover everything up to Straczynski. Because once we get there, people are very familiar with that time period. Maybe not so much with Jenkins on Spectacular, but in terms of Amazing Spider-Man, people are very aware of J. Michael Straczynski. So my goal is to hopefully at least cover up to issue 29 and then end with annual 2001 for that reboot era stuff. So we'll see if we can get there. It's harder to do the show alone. So everybody that has been helping to fill in, like Luis and Adam, I greatly appreciate those folks a ton, because doing this show is something that I really love to do. And honestly, it's hard to keep up with it with everyday life and such. The next year is going to be kind of chaotic for me. I have to move and figure out a whole bunch of stuff in that realm. But when people can help fill in on episodes and guest host at the very least, maybe not have to write recaps, because I still do most of those. But anytime I can get any sort of help, it's great, because I feel like the one-sided conversation of the solo episodes, that's not as interesting as having two people to bounce ideas off of. Enough said about that. The Clone Saga episode is unfortunately indefinitely postponed. I think maybe at the end of this episode, if I have some time, I'll play the voice messages that we got. We got 2, so there's not too many. And then I can just talk about it, because these issues have a little bit to do with the Clone Saga as well, because Todd is so great with that. When it comes to that, I hope we can do it sometime soon, but I'm really not certain. Just kind of depends on when Matthew is available again to get it done. Trying to think if there's anything else. Again, a massive thank you to everybody that listened to my interview with Bud LaRosa. That was a ton of fun, and I've been trying to get interviews even before I started this show, just for personal things, or for the Scarlet Archives, which is a thing that I do, but nothing's panned out. So having that be my first one and it be so well received by everybody has felt really great. Just personally, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for supporting that episode specifically. And hopefully you've continued to listen to the show, or maybe gone backwards to catch up with us. So, Identity Crisis began in February of 1998, and the marketing for Identity Crisis is really cool. They had a series of posters that would be put up in shops and house ads as well, where there would be all the identities, and it would be like, for this instance, since we're covering, Sensational today, there was a house ad that said, if the Hornet is really Spider-Man, then who is Ricochet? And they just did that for every single book. So they did like, if Dusk is really Spider-Man, then who is Prodigy? And there's this really great poster of Pete in the middle of the four identities, kind of like as walls are closing in around him. And it says, how long can one wall crawler be four different heroes before the walls start closing in? So what a great time to be a Spider-Man fan. I wish I could have experienced it, as they were coming out. But from everybody that I've talked to that has grown up reading these books, like picking them off of the spinner racks and the shelves and whatnot, seems to have been a really fantastic time. The marketing went all out, and you could tell that they really cared. Wizard had a whole write-up about Identity Crisis. I can't remember what issue it is off the top of my head. I'll try to add it into this description. When we were getting to Identity Crisis, I really wanted to cover that issue of Wizard as well, kind of like we covered in the very first episode of the podcast when we did the Wizard issue that was covering going into this time period. But it kind of slipped my mind right before I hit record, and it's too late now. I might be able to do it on one of the other ones, though. But it's a really great issue. It gives you great insight, and it shows you like the original designs. But if you do have the Identity Crisis trade paperbacks, either one of them, both the original release or the re-release from 2012, 2013-ish time period, it has all of that as well, where it shows you the designs and kind of the thought process that all the writers went through when it came to developing their respective identities. And since we're covering Sensational, I'll just talk a little bit about the Hornet really quick, and the incredible design by Mike Wieringo. It's such a great design. I love. I wish I could explain it properly, but it's just the headpiece and everything just works so well. And I like that in the behind the scenes stuff, Todd is very adamant that Identity Crisis was not a gimmick, and that everything that happened in that book came naturally because of what Norman had been doing to make Peter's life a living hell, making it impossible to be Spider-Man and everything. So developing the identities was both fun and daunting, and it was great exercise for writers and editors and artists and writers and everybody in the games, because they had to come up with a little bit of backgrounds and a little bit of everything. And it's fun that he explains why the Hornet. I'm going to read this word for word. Why the Hornet, said DeZago. Well, we had done a story about the Swarm. Oh. And we had always wanted to find a way for Peter to use Ben's stingers. When it was done, Mike faxed me the sketch. And as always, I thought it was way cool. The next day, we realized it looked a bit like Hank Pym's old Yellow Jacket getup. So what if a bunch of people mistook him for Hank? That could be funny. And Mike Wieringo, rest in peace, remembers it slightly differently. The Hornet remembers the old Yellow Jacket uniform because I'm a big Yellow Jacket fan, he said. Although I didn't think it would be colored magenta when I drew it. So that's some fun insight of the thought process behind the Hornet, and just how much fun those two guys had developing it, and everybody had developing it. So, with that little preamble done, why not get into the books themselves? We're starting with the Identity Crisis Prelude, which takes place in Sensational Spider-Man number 26, titled Signs of the Time. It was released on February 4th of 1998, written by Todd DeZago, with art by Todd Knock and Andrew Hennessy, and colors by Gregory Wright. It's early morning in the Parker Watson household, and Aunt Anna is helping little Hope with her sign language. Pete pops into the scene searching for his bag while prepping for his day. He grabs the morning edition of the Bugle and heads to the kitchen. After he's gone, Hope signs something about Spider-Man, and Anna says Spider-Man is a bad man. Pete tries to vent to MJ about everything going on, but she finally cracks and says she's heard enough. She wants a break from it all, and the two gather their things to head to the bus. Over at the current residency of Morris Bench, he's chilling in the tub, which I guess is just himself. Ew. And reading the paper. He sees the bounty placed on Spidey's head and is pissed that it wasn't there when he took out Spidey a few weeks ago, for free. He wants to take advantage of the bounty and creates a plan to draw Spidey out. Spider-Man's situation reaches the Wild Pack at the Symkarian Embassy, leading to Silver Sable and Sandman to make sure that this Spider-Man is the same one they know, unlike the last time. Now at the Bugle, Billy Walters mentions to Pete that he skipped out on their movie hang the other night. Peter apologizes and admits he was caught up in all the Osborn drama. He promises to make it up to Billy with lunch at the Daily Grind, though. Glory interrupts and introduces the mysterious blonde who has been looking for Pete the past few issues. It's none other than Clone Saga superstar Desiree Winthrop. She claims to have some sort of psychic abilities and wants to talk to Peter about Ben's death. She felt Ben in his last moments, knows he died a hero, and wants help understanding the feelings. Unfortunately for her, Hydra Man is reported to be taking hostages at the same time as their conversation, and Peter has to run. With hostages huddled up in a water tower, Morris waits for Spidey's arrival, but he's surprised by the appearance of Sandman, coming to the rescue. Their battle helps Spidey slip in, mostly undetected. The people fear for their lives seeing Spider-Man, but he assures them he won't kill them. In an interlude, Adrian Toomes is released by the court and plans on ridding himself of one final nuisance. Spidey's rescue attempt is delayed by the damage done to the support of the water tower. He uses his strength to punch a hole in the bottom and lets the civilians out. One unconscious lady remains, and Pete slips into his normal clothes to get her out to safety, without bounty hunters or cops shooting at him. Sandman begins to merge with Hydra Man, as Silver Sable freezes the two together, ending their battle. Pete heads to the base of Hobie Brown to thank him for the assist in Spider Hunt. Hobie offers his services whenever Spidey may need them, and Pete actually has an idea for that offer. And there is Sensational Spider-Man number 26. I think this is a really great interlude into everything with Identity Crisis. While not, super involved in the story, I like that these prelude month issues are just Peter doing one last sort of heroic deed while also having to prevent Spider-Man from being seen. With all the drama from Spider Hunt and the bounty, people are just not giving up going after him, which is, understandable. $5 million is $5 million, right? But I like that at the end of this issue, Pete has to, in order to protect the lives of the woman he's trying to save, he has to change back into his normal clothes. And I didn't mention it, but when he does do that, he then, the spider suit then falls out of the water tower, and it's just stuffed with webbing, so that everybody shoots at it, and they're like, that mysterious guy must have been Spider-Man, or where did he go, or whatever it might be. Seeing Sandman and Silver Sable again, it's definitely been a while. I am not 100% sure of what they're up to at this time period, but I know the last time I believe they were seen in Spider-Man books was all the way back in 1995 at the in the Return of Spider-Man month books with Ben Reilly. So where they once again had to make sure that a Spider-Man was the real Spider-Man, and then they realized, oh, this is a new guy. Everything with Hope here is leading into something bigger in the following issues that we'll get to. But honestly, the biggest thing here in general, and for me, is the return of Desiree Winthrop. Desiree was a character that was very big in the Clone Saga. She was part of the original Daily Grind crew, kind of as this fashion student, kind of pretty girl, rich girl, had like a posse of people that would follow her around. But in Sensational Spider-Man number 6, which was Dan Jurgens' last issue on the book, he had her and Ben have this really nice heart-to-heart where Desiree invites Ben to, to eat at the Daily Grind, and Ben basically just calls her out for her posse, her personality being very, afraid of everybody judging her and everything, and just kind of really looking into her soul and giving her a reality check. And I think that was a really great moment in that book. That book is one of the best single issues of Ben Reilly's time in Spider-Man history. I really like that book in general, and it's a great conclusion to Dan's run. And then when Todd and Mike took over Sensational Spider-Man, they had Desiree and Ben go on a date during the Swarm story. And in my mind, that was definitely the most interesting romance that they could have established in the Clone Saga, especially after, Janine and Jessica were out of the scene with, Redemption and Dan finishing his run with Sensational 6. That's when Jessica went away. So if we were going to have Ben be paired up with somebody, Desiree was honestly the best choice, especially after Dan wrote that incredible moment in Sensational 6, the self-reflection and how they simply can relate to each other, because Ben has also been alone most of his life and everything like that. So she was a really great character to pair with him. And it's unfortunate that they only had those couple moments together before Ben passed. But I do like here that Desiree is reintroduced with, some sort of psychic telepathic abilities. And since she was so involved in Ben during those final moments right before his death, she apparently felt him when he died at the hands of the Goblin. We get more into it later on. That's around issue 29. So pretty soon after, the next issue after this episode, we'll be getting more into her story. But I think it's great that she shows up here, and I'm glad that she wants to talk with Peter about it and kind of go through Ben's final thoughts with Peter and help, understand them, and just kind of get the insight. At the same time, Peter's relationship with Billy Walters is unfortunately starting to crumble a little bit more, and that really comes to a head in the next couple that we're going to follow. Overall, this was a really great in-between issue to establish kind of what we need to do. Peter goes to see Hobie at the end to get his new costume and get help. We see Toombs being released from the courts and what he's going to do in the next couple issues. And it's just cool to see all these people again and kind of get a little bit of not closure, because it doesn't really need to happen, but just more of Todd Knock and Todd doing Hydro Man stories, which I think is interesting, because Hydro Man is one of those characters that is so ingrained into Spider-Man because of the 90s animated series, but really isn't used ever. And this is a little bit past that period. This is a year after that show had ended, or so, or maybe a couple months after. And here he is. He's still here, kicking in the Spider books for this issue. If I had to put a number on it, I would give this guy probably about an 8 out of 10. I think it's a really great issue, especially for, you can say it's filler. I might say it's establishing, but a really great book. The next two, when it comes to ratings, I'm probably going to rate them after I cover 28, just because they kind of go hand in hand. And I'd rather do them together as a whole of Identity Crisis versus just doing them one by one. So with that said, let's continue on to Sensational Spider-Man number 27, titled Inventing the Hornet. This was released on March 4th of 1998, written by Todd DeZago and Mike Wieringo, with art by Mike Wieringo, Rich Case, and Gregory Wright. I want to mention before I start that the variant cover for this book is incredible. So the way that this one was released, you would have the main cover, which has Spider-Man on it. And then you would open the front cover and it would be a double cover. The cover underneath would be the Sensational Hornet cover. And then if you bought the variant, it was the other way around, where the main cover would be the Sensational Hornet, and then you would open it up and it would be the Sensational Spider-Man. So for those collectors out there looking to add these specific single issues to your collection, it's kind of great to buy both. I have both of all the Identity Crisis variant covers because I just think they're so incredible that they would do that. I really like that a lot. Anyway, it's late night at the Daily Bugle, and everyone, maybe just Todd's favorite villain, Norton G. Fester, the looter, is planning to loot the Bugle of their bounty money. He's armed with his beloved, literally, meteor and a blaster to harness its power. The blaster doesn't work, which Norton chalks up to the meteor watching Conan too late. He smashes through the window with his foot, and from behind Norton, a new superhero reveals himself, the Hornet. In one of few Let's Go Back moments, we are back to the end of the last issue, with Peter asking Hobie Brown for help. Hobie has been developing a new jetpack that he says is just way too heavy for any normal man. But Spidey is no normal man. Pete gets inspiration from a hornet swarm in the Bugle article and the jetpack's wing shape. He takes the pack and looks forward to using it. Back at the Daily Bugle, Hornet and Looter continue their battle. The ruckus catches the attention of Flash Thompson, who is working late. Norton threatens to shoot Hornet with the meteor gun, and Hornet just laughs. The meteor is dead. The gas emitted from it gave Norton his powers, and it's just a worthless rock now. Stunned, he quickly takes Flash, who has now entered the scene, hostage. Norton wants the money, and will make a trade to give Flash back, which triggers another flashback in the book. Watching TV is how Norton found out about the cash. There's also a hilarious blank word bubble of the meteor seemingly speaking to Norton, which leads to him calling it Snooky and hugging it tightly. I just have to say, this book is incredible. At the Parker home, still in flashback mode, Peter has donned the Hornet suit that MJ perfectly designed. Pete takes MJ out for a test drive of the jetpack, and they embrace each other happily, looking forward to what the new identity could do for them. Before they can think too much, a swarm of geese get in the way and clog up the jetpack. Pete is forced to use his web shooter to save him and MJ from going splat. Above, the Vulture is back to his villainous ways, wishing to destroy Spider-Man, while Billy Walters is ditched by Peter once again. Alright, back in the present. The standoff between Norton with Flash and the Hornet continues. Pete distracts Norton by saying his gun is on poach and socking him in the face. Flash takes the blaster and says what's inside isn't even a rock. It's a boom! Shield bursts into the scene and breaks up the fight. In the chaos, Norton lunges at Flash, but Pete utilizes Ben Reilly's stingers to knock Norton out. Outside, the press is gnawing at the chance of interviewing the new hero. Norman Osborn arrives at the scene and thanks Hornet for his heroics, despite there not actually being any real money in the Bugle, but also says that Norman's team could use Hornet's skills. When asked where he's from, the Hornet says he's from Charlotte, and also that New York doesn't have to worry about Spider-Man anymore. Billy is still upset at Peter for always ditching, and accepts that maybe Pete just isn't the kind of guy he can be friends with. We end the book with the Vulture watching the Hornet broadcast. Insulted that Hornet must have defeated Spider-Man from his claims, Vulture vows to destroy the Hornet. And there we have Sensational Spider-Man number 27. I adore this book. You can tell that it's just the crew having the most fun in the world writing Norton Fester, the looter, and his insane obsession with his meteor once again. Todd really likes the looter because he's shown up in in Spectacular Scarlet Spider. He showed up to fight Ben in Sensational Spider-Man, and then now he's showed up here as well. And all the times he's just obsessed with getting his meteor back, even though it's dead in the water, and always has to do with S.H.I.E.L.D. bursting in at the last second to try to take the rock. But no, this book is just really, really incredible when it comes to kind of the the character work here and even the plot is fun and the plot is bouncy and everything. I like where Peter gets, the Hornet jetpack. I love Hobie's involvement in this particular book at this point, with everything earlier and then into now. I like that that's a way that we can get Spidey to get some technology that he wouldn't normally have, is he has an inventor friend. I like that MJ designs the Hornet costume. It's such a flashy costume with, the magenta and blacks and the blue shading with the yellow logo on the front. It's such a great contrast of colors, and it hits the eye just right. Their moment they have when they're flying around the city, and there's just that great panel of them flying together, and MJ says she feels so liberated, and this is exactly what they needed to kind of clear their head of all the chaos going on. You can just tell that these two people are so in love, and I love that a lot. But unfortunately, that comes to an end with Peter having to use his web shooter. So, he can never truly escape from Spider-Man. Billy, once again, everything's kind of falling apart with their relationship being ditched once again. I feel so bad for the guy because he just wants to be friends with Peter. And Peter does legitimately want to be friends with him, too. It's just the way the cards go and the Parker luck and everything. It just ruins any chance that Peter has at making new friends most of the time. Having Flash here is interesting. It's fun to see him around the Bugle now. I think that's one of Norman's most evil things, is just rounding up all of Peter's friends to use as game pieces. But I like that he's kind of also just what is this stupid guy talking about? This rock isn't even a rock. And of course, the main thing for me is Ben Reilly references. So the fact that Ben's stingers are used as, sedative weapons for the Hornet is a great concept, because, stingers, bees, hornets, it's perfect. And like I mentioned in that initial preamble part with Todd talking about how he kind of wanted Peter to use the stingers, this is really the perfect way to do it. And I'm so glad it's here. It fits so perfectly. People do confuse the Hornet with the Yellow Jacket, and they're like, "Oh, are you still married to Janet Van Dyne? And are you going to rejoin the Avengers and stuff like this?" So that was always fun. Or that's always fun to read. I like Norman wanting to use the Hornet to, sabotage Spider-Man even more. That's just so right of Norman to want to take advantage of this situation like he does everything else. Especially with how his plans are kind of falling into place recently. Things aren't going exactly how he wants, so he's just always looking for new pawns in his little chess game. Lastly, Vulture is vowing revenge on the Hornet. So that is what we will be covering in the next issue, with the beautiful Mike Wieringo classic Vulture. So I'm glad they were able to get him back to basics for Mike and back for this story. So I will say that I'll call myself out all the way back in the issues 16 to 18 of Sensational. I said that Vulture never came back, and I somehow completely forgot that he was in these stories at that time. It's one of those things where when I'm recording the podcast, some things just absolutely leave my brain and it comes to ramble mode, and I don't remember anything. I guess it's an anxiety thing, who knows? But here he is, and he's very much a major player in this story. So for anybody that was confused when I said that, I did correct myself in the YouTube comments of that episode when it came out, but I never really addressed it on the podcast otherwise, I don't think. But here I am addressing it now, because obviously he's right here. All right, let's take her home with Sensational Spider-Man number 28, shall we? Titled Hornet's Nest. This was published on April 1st of 1998 with the same team as last issue. The Hornet is the talk of the town, as he's being eyed by the likes of the Avengers, the Heroes for Hire, Norman Osborn, and even the Fantastic Four. The F4 are a little suspicious of Hornet, but Ben Grimm assures the rest that if he's a bad guy, they'll just clobber him. Vulture is also watching the broadcast and swears to destroy the Hornet for seemingly getting rid of Spider-Man. Pete is having a blast as the Hornet, especially since he's tricked Norman into believing he's actually a new hero. Peter loves the irony of Norman hiring Hornet to fight Spider-Man, but MJ isn't so into the idea. She knows Norman's true nature, and if he finds out that Peter is playing with him, it could make things worse. Norman has a press conference planned for the Hornet, and MJ thinks maybe Pete shouldn't go. But he's going to go anyway. The pleasure of Norman honoring the person he hates the most is too enticing to Peter. Hope and Anna enter the scene, Hope wanting to say hi before she gets on the bus for school. She signs I love you to everyone, but when Anna and MJ are gone, she switches to the Spider-Man thwip. Peter is shocked. Does she know the truth? Peter goes out flying to clear his head and is met by Johnny Storm. Johnny didn't like the comment that Hornet made about not needing to worry about Spider-Man, but Hornet assures that he didn't do anything to Spider-Man. Torch flies away, and Pete is flattered to learn that Johnny cares so much. Now at the Bugle, Pete finds Billy all alone. Due to his fight with the looter, he once again had to ditch out on their movie plans. Peter starts to give his classic excuse, but Billy isn't having it this time. Billy thought that they could be friends, but maybe they should just be coworkers, and that's it. Later on the roof of the Daily Bugle, Norman's press conference has begun. As Norman starts to tarnish Spidey's name, he glares right into Peter's eyes. Pete makes his exit and arrives back as the Hornet. Norman presents Hornet with a $20,000 check, but Hornet asks that the money be donated to the Low Ridge School for the Deaf instead. Just then, Vulture makes his final move, wishing to kill Hornet for robbing him of his revenge against Spider-Man. The two take to the skies, and Pete quickly remembers that Toomes has the upper hand. Peter begins to fly towards the ground and calls Toomes Vulchie in the process. Hornet's constant quipping leads Vulture to realize that he is Spider-Man, yelling it out for the crowd below. Pete flies Vulture face first into a billboard and knocks him out. The police take Toomes away as Norman stares angrily at the Hornet. Back at home, Pete is packing up the Hornet suit. Now that Norman knows, he can't use the identity anymore. MJ tells Peter not to worry and that they'll survive as they always have. Looking out their window, Pete sees Hope waving to them. He then begins to tell MJ what happened that morning as the book comes to a close. And that is our identity crisis for Sensational Spider-Man. Again, just like the last issue, this book is incredible in just about every single way. It just feels like such a good read, and everything with, the mystery behind the Hornet and all the characters interacting with said mystery, and we get a glimpse of the bigger Marvel universe, which is something last episode I said that I always hoped for more of. It's just it's an incredible read all around. And the artwork, man, the artwork is so spectacular or sensational. I can't praise the team enough for the work they do on this book. Kind of taking it step by step, I do like the in the beginning, as they're going through all these TV broadcasts, they're showing all the heroes watching the news. And, everybody's kind of like scouting him. The Avengers are scouting him, and the Heroes for Hire are mad that that new heroes are coming out doing work for free when they charge money for it and stuff like that. So that's always fun. We get a Amazing Fantasy 15 homage with the Hornet. Kind of wish it was a full page, but it's just a little panel to show like it happened on TV. I think that's really cool when they do stuff like that with new costumes and new characters. Once again, Norman is just plotting to turn the Hornet against Spider-Man. And I like that there's this panel of Hobie and his girlfriend watching TV, and he's just like pointing out every little intricate piece of the Hornet costume, like the jetpack and stuff. And she's just like, "All right, Hobie, I'm impressed. Let me watch the news." That's just it's so fun. I just love the way that Todd and I mean Mike co-plotted, but the way that they write characters is so fun. The fact that Peter wants to play into the Hornet thing to gloat for Norman is really funny. Celebrate your greatest enemy because you don't know it's me. And of course everything with Hope here. is pretty major. The whole insinuation of does she know? Does she know? It's a pretty big thing, and I really like Hope's character. Just she adds such a nice piece to the sensational puzzle with all these characters, and now we have more mystery to build upon. The interaction with Johnny Storm is really great. Everybody knows that Johnny and Peter are really good friends, and the fact that Human Torch once again, kind of like issue 26, where we have a sort of repeat of the Ben Reilly era. We kind of get that here as well with Torch. Like, what did you do to Spider-Man? Why did you say that on TV? And who are you? And Pete has to, assure Johnny that Spider-Man's fine, and there's nothing wrong with him. He didn't actually kill him or anything. And I love that Peter's just grateful that Johnny cares so much to do that. And now for some tragedy with Billy Walters. I think this is kind of skipping ahead, but Billy's last issue is a really fantastic comic book. It's issue 31 of Sensational. And I'm excited to get there. And this kind of lays the seeds for that specific book, with Billy finally giving up on Peter and their friendship. It's so sad because, like I said, Billy just wants a friend, and Peter wants so badly to be there for him, but he just can't with all the Spider-Man stuff, and especially recently with people trying to kill him, and the bounty, and the Hornet, and just all of this stuff. It's so heartbreaking that Billy has to finally say, we should just be coworkers. Especially because he kind of takes it out on himself. He says that he's not the easiest guy to get along with. He's obnoxious and sometimes scares people away. But he thought that Peter and him could be friends. And Peter tries to interject, but Billy just doesn't want to hear it. And we get this incredible panel at the bottom of page 12 of Peter sitting in this chair, Billy walking away, putting on his jacket, and a shadow of Spider-Man is, covering them or behind them, because, that's the looming issue, is that Spider-Man gets in the way of the friendship. It's a powerful panel. It's just really incredibly put together, and you just feel it. I feel so bad for both of them in this moment. But like I said, it has a nice payoff when we get there. At the press conference, we get that incredible glare, the sinister glare. Not really, it is incredible, but like a sinister glare that Norman gives to Peter when talking about how much of a miscreant that Spider-Man is, and Peter just has to get out of there and get back in the Hornet suit. I like that Peter wants to donate the money to Hope's school. It's very kind of him. That's a very Peter Parker thing to do, of course. No matter how much he might need the money, he's always going to give it to a cause that's bigger than he is. And then we can get to the Vulture battle. Again, such a well-composed set of pages for this fight. And I think it's very fitting that if anybody were to find out who Spider-Man is, it would be one of his oldest and first villains, being the Vulture. From the mannerisms, from the speech patterns, from everything, he can immediately tell that Spider-Man is the Hornet. And it's crazy to me, but it makes so much sense that Toomes would and Norman wouldn't immediately. So I like that a lot. It's a great piece of this little story here that unfortunately has Peter have to hang up the Hornet costume, but we had a nice 2-issue run with it. And obviously the costume will later come back when the Slingers become a thing, with the heroes that were inspired by those identities. But just a really fantastic way to conclude this little story by defeating Toomes once more, and that sick look on Norman's face when when he looks at the Hornet and the Hornet looks back at him. In the panel with the Hornet, his visor is very reflective, and you just see the Norman glare, and then we, focus in on it in the panel next to it. Really incredible stuff by Mike and Rich. And of course, Gregory Wright, who kills it on colors every time. And this book ends with Hope staring into Peter and MJ's room once more. I feel like they should use the blinds more. Like they have little like curtains, so they might want to use them. But I guess for the sake of the story, it's got to be interesting, right? And that's our issues for today. Again, a really great set of 3 issues that all flow together so well and have a great cohesive story, especially 27 and 28. They are a perfect pair of books. And when I say perfect, I do mean perfect. These are getting 10 out of 10s for me. I am such a massive fan of just this story as a whole. I sing Todd's praises and this whole creative team, but books like this are where they really shine. I'm glad they get to have a lot of fun with, their Savage Lands and their Doctor Strange stories and everything like that. But and in those stories, we have a lot of emotional moments. We have a lot of key character elements. We have a lot of key characters introduced. And I think all of that is fantastic. But when it's a book where it's so focused in on Peter Parker and Spider-Man's life and specifically what he's going through and his cast of characters and everything around him, like the Vulture and Prowler issues, like the DK issue, and like these 2, it is just hard to beat. They are perfect or near perfect stories in every way. These cast of creators just understand the world of Spider-Man so well that they craft incredible books every single time. And again, Mike's last issue on the book is one of my absolute favorites of this time period as well. So I'm very much looking forward to getting to that book. It's going to be very, bittersweet because it's the last we see of Mike for a while on Spider-Man. But damn. So I hope you all agree with my ratings and that you also love these stories. If you have anything you want to say about them, feel free to, shoot me a message. I always appreciate getting feedback from people on the podcast. And, everything like that. So if you ever want to reach out to me, feel free to. I'm happy to listen. And that is really all I have to say. I will catch you all next time, where I will hopefully have a nice guest host, and we'll be covering Amazing Spider-Man number 433 through 435, Ricochet. Have a good one. All right, sorry, it's not over yet. I'm back. Just as a little added bonus, I did want to go back and play those 2 voice recordings that I received from people about the Clone Saga. Just as a thank you to those people specifically, to not ignore what the time they put into actually recording this and sending it to me. So this first one is from MTS Comics. He's a follower on my Instagram who actually had Tom Lyle as his professor in college. So we've talked about that a lot. And so here is his message about the Clone Saga.
Hey guys, this is Matt, and what the Clone Saga means to me is basically my childhood. It was a time and era where nothing was off limits, and you got to see what I would still argue is some of the best innovations of Spider-Man and his costumes in that 90s era. So yeah, I would say the Clone Saga was, despite some of the background stuff going on with it, was some of the most unlimited creativity that I have seen thus far in the Spider-Man universe.
That's great, Matt. I completely agree with you. When it comes to the Clone Saga, it really was kind of unlimited potential. Since they were once again kind of starting to get everything back to basics, they were doing that on top of introducing new themes and ideas. The idea of the clone being alive at all is a massive example of that. But then you have characters like like Kane, obviously, and the balls to kill Doc Ock, and you have incredible like different characters like Scryer, and you have Judas Traveler, and you have the introduction or the reintroduction of the Jackal and all of his maniacal plans, and every story has something really unique about it, and especially like you said, the costumes. There are some very, very iconic things that come out of that time period. Of course, the Scarlet Spider, the Quick Change costume, Ben Reilly's Spider-Man costume. So much comes from that time period. Spider Carnage. It's a lot of, like you said, some of the biggest creative leaps and no holds bar that there has been in Spider-Man. So I completely agree with that take. It's really it's so accurate. And I appreciate you reaching out to share your thoughts. And I'm glad that you have an attachment to the Clone Saga, just like so many of us do. And now this one is from a follower who I believe his name is Steve, but his name on Instagram is A Scuba. So I'm going to play his. It's a little bit longer, so here we go.
Okay, so the question was posed, what part of the Clone Saga is my favorite, and what does it mean to me? To answer that, I have to jump to the end of it all, to the Night of the Goblin, when Ben sacrifices himself to save Peter and essentially everyone they love. I'd read a few issues of the Clone Saga as a kid, and somehow ended up reading that final issue before understanding a lot of who Ben is as a character. I was fascinated by the idea of Peter having a brother, that brother dying, and as a kid, it created a real heavy emotional response for me, even though I didn't know much about Ben. So since then, I've gone back and read the Clone Saga, which effectively establishes Ben as the real quote-unquote Spider-Man, and I appreciate the Night of the Goblin even more. Spider-Man can't die. That's like a key tenet of who Spider-Man is. He's bigger than comics. He's bigger than media. But really, Peter Parker is the one who can't die. And they played on that really well. Because Ben is able to do essentially the most Spider-Man thing of all time and give his life for the people he loves. At that time, he was Spider-Man. And Spider-Man risks his life day in and day out for the people he loves. And so Ben was able to make that ultimate sacrifice, which I think is really beautiful with the character. And his character development in general, from going from outcast to accepting himself to being accepted as Spider-Man by the heroes at large, and then ultimately dying to save the one true Spider-Man. I just think it's beautiful and poetic. Clearly, he's been resurrected since then, and I don't love what they've done with him since. Although I am happy he's around now again in comics day to day. So, yeah, the Night of the Goblin. That's it for me. Thanks for listening.
That is a really fantastic answer. That's he makes a really great point with the idea of Spider-Man can't die, but Peter Parker being the one who can't really die. The fact that Ben did get to become Spider-Man was that time period's one and only Spider-Man, and got to make that ultimate sacrifice to save not just Peter Parker, but risked his life to save Flash and to save Betty and to save Liz and to save all of these people that were trapped in the Bugle, along with his ultimate sacrifice jumping in front of the glider to save Peter. It is extremely poetic, and it really is as crappy as it is that Ben Reilly had to die. At least he died the ultimate hero. And I think that's the best part of Peter Parker 75, because obviously Norman Osborn comes back and it's a huge revelation, for the Spider books at large. It resets Peter back into the mantle, and it brings back Peter's greatest enemy, but also it gives us a sincere and emotional and powerful goodbye to Ben Reilly, even without the the epilogue parts that were added to the trade that you can read everywhere nowadays. The issue, as it first came out, still has all of those key, emotional core moments. And I think everything they added for the trade just makes that even more powerful. So thank you so much for that message. You make an incredible point, and I wish more people would say that about Peter Parker 75, because a lot of the spaces that I'm in online, people like Peter Parker 75, but are also like, damn, they killed Ben Reilly. And I think there's way more to it than that. And there always has been, and there always will be. So thank you to you both for sending me those messages and giving your own thoughts on why the Clone Saga kind of means so much to you. If anybody else wants to do that, you are more than welcome to send me anything, anytime, and I'll either try to play it on the show or, listen to it myself and give you, my response. So thank you all again. And of course, like I said, we'll catch you next time on The Forgotten Era. Bye-bye.